Hey, welcome to my second video. This is another deck tech of one of my personal decks. This is my Tamir deck, and it's a lands-based deck, but I didn't really know what to call it because I also have this side strategy of kind of a spell-based, spell-slinging deck. So I'm calling it spell-slinging lands. Anyways, let's get right into it. So I came up with this idea when I was playing a mono-green deck, and I remember the day, I was with a couple of friends. I was playing my mono green deck, and I had this interesting board. I had a Quirion Ranger, Secure Tribe Scout, and a Tireless Tracker. So you can see probably this interaction here. I was able to make a clue on every single person's turn by returning a forest to untap this a Secure Tribe Scout and tap the Tribe Scout to play the forest I just returned. A lot of people might be thinking, "Oh, that's awesome! You're making a clue every turn on other people's turns." But what I was really interested in was just a Quirion Ranger. I thought returning a forest to my hand was so interesting to me because that made me always have lands to play. So I thought I could make a Landfall deck around this. So when I say Landfall deck, I don't mean like a typical Landfall deck. Most Landfall decks just have a bunch of spells that ramp, and then they hope to get a creature that has the Landfall trigger, and then just put a bunch of lands out and get a bunch of triggers off that. This deck only has one creature that actually has the word Landfall on it, and but I mostly built it around just the lands themselves. I want to trigger, and you'll see when I go into it more. So the strategy of this is more to return lands by bouncing them back to hand with various effects. I do have some effects when I play the lands again; they'll trigger things, but I don't just have an abundance of bunch of ramp cards because I think I just wanted to have more various interesting effects. And then the big thing that made it the spell sling is these no modal double face cards. I have, I think, 5 of those in there, and that's where I really wanted to recur spells. So I recur the MDFCs by playing them from the grave, then also bounce those back to hand, and then I can replay those spells over and over again. So I also have these tutor packages of the Urza Saga, brand new, and Spellseeker have a bunch of spells, and that's another thing that kind of overlaps with the spell strategy. And then I have some cool instant sorcery technology. I like to call it technology at the end of this slideshow here. So I thought this was way harder to organize than my other deck. The synergies aren't just straight up bam in your face. So it took me a little bit to put this together, but all right, let's get into it. All right, so the commander of my deck is Maelstrom Wanderer, as you saw in the title. I like to choose commanders that just have value right when you cast them, and who cares if they kill it. Only downside when this thing dies is all your creatures do lose the haste there, but anyways, if this sticks around, your creatures will have haste for the rest of the time. But this deck, like I already said, takes lands and spells and tries to find synergies that can recur the spells with the lands or recur the lands with the spells. So let's get into it. The best part of the deck is the lands part of the deck. I only have 14 lands, so basics and shocks, that really don't do anything. They're just kind of there to produce mana. But there's actually 28 lands in this deck that do things. They have enter the battlefield effects, activated abilities, static abilities, or they're modal double face cards. So that's my favorite part of the deck is all my lands. I wanted to make a lands deck that actually isn't just a landfall deck. I wanted to win with my lands and recur those lands. So let's get in and see these lands. So the fetches and the bounces are pretty much kind of this engine of the decks. A lot of landfall decks run a ton of fetches, but I only wanted to get the ones that are blue so I can get my Mystic Sanctuary with it. So I just have these 2 fetches, and I also wanted to make more room for other interesting lands. So just 2 fetches, and the bounce lands are probably the best because that's our strategy with the lands is we're bouncing lands over and over again and reusing the as for some various landfall stuff, but also reusing the modal double face cards. So yeah, we maxed out on the bounce lands. These are great. Then we can also bounce some scry lands, get some scries. Only have 2 of those in there, and then we have some cool draw. So if you're able to tutor these up, you can bank some draws for later. You can bounce a Triumph to hand to cycle later. I like this one so much, I might end up cutting the Stomping Ground for its cycle land. So I just like to cycle ones that you can tutor up with fetches, which is kind of sweet. And this is my favorite part of the lands is to control lands. I'm a control player in Heart, so Ghost Quarter had to have a way to destroy opposing lands, but I didn't want to do Wasteland because it's not as the Ghost Quarter is sweet because you can blow up your own lands and get an additional landfall trigger, so that does come up quite a bit. You can fix your lands, fix your mana as well with it. So the Ghost Quarter is kind of nice, and also it's not as mean. If you wanted to blow up land, you're like, okay, we could just give you a basic instead. I added the Mouth of Ronom because I wanted it to get rid of this pesky commanders that needed to be removed. I wanted a removal spell, and I was playing against a Zur deck, and I didn't. If I had this in the deck, I would have been fine, but I didn't because I had a way to tutor up a land. And so after that game, I added this. So it's kind of nice to have a tutorable removal spell. Speaking of tutorable removal, this is great if there's a go wide token strategy. This is one land I actually have not activated, but it's there just in case. It's kind of my toolbox of control. And then this one is actually used in Modern and Titan decks in the past. Have 0-1 blockers, can keep on bouncing this and make 0-1 blockers to stop people from hitting you. I chose this over Maze of Ith because it's reusable a little bit and also taps your mana. And then the Cascade, I love this one. I love to bounce this one and just go in full control mode. So that's my favorite part is when I'm doing full control mode and just bouncing these cool lands and tapping down things and it's a good time. And here's the WinCon lands. So this Mystic Sanctuary is the one that really does bridge the spell strategy with the land strategy. This is really what made me kind of go into a spell, like instant sorcery heavy build. Instead of a landfall, typical landfall build is this card. I really wanted to build around this card, and it's been awesome to kind of loop stuff with this. Feel of Dead is great in any landfall deck, and Valakut. Now, I don't have enough mountains to actually make this go off. I have a couple ways to turn this on, and then Urza Saga we'll go into in a second, and then Mosswort Bridge is sweet with Amulet of Vigor, because you could play this, it untaps, and you could just start casting things over and over again, then bounce it, do it again. There'll be games when I get this going. This is a sweet engine just to keep bouncing this and going over and over again with it. I could go like 4 or 5 times just casting things for 1 green. It's pretty nice. So these are kind of the lands that I want to kind of win the games with. Let's go into Urza's. Oh, actually, no. And I have Vesuva to copy these. Vesuva can't do the Mystic Sanctuary because it comes to play tapped, but it can give you a second Valakut, which is great. I have copied Mosswort Bridge before with it, and Feel of Dead and Urza Saga. So Vesuva's great. Also, it can copy on any of your control lands. This is just a great utility land there. So Urza's Artifact. So this is I just added the artifact package is not that great with Maelstrom Wanderer, but I just really wanted to add the Urza Saga, and it's kind of like I was looking for a Bojuka Bog in any color, and this is kind of it. They had the one, I forget the name of it. There's one that exiles all graveyards, but I didn't want to exile my graveyard. So this one gives me a Soul Ring. Amulet Vigor is great. You know, that's literally a modern deck with Urza Saga getting Amulet Vigor. And getting Sensei Dividing Top is sweet, so you can just check the top cards for your Maelstrom Wanderer. And then, but that's what I was talking about. This is now, Urza Saga is a Bojuka Bog. Grab your Tormod's Crypt and helps you be consistent, get some graveyard hate versus those kind of broken graveyard decks. Gives you a removal spell if you need to, and also this is great to, Aether Spellbomb is great to bounce your own creatures, so you can bounce your Maelstrom Wanderer, spinning in, it's great, and then also you can just get another map, or get another land with a map. So those are my little Urza's artifacts that you can get with Urza's Saga, so that's pretty great. Now we're into land tutors. We got that toolbox of lands. Tolaria West is my favorite one. You can grab this and then bounce it later and then keep playing it from the graveyard. It has, again, this is another kind of Bojuka Bog. You can grab your Tormod's Crypt, like I said. So that's awesome. And it's sweet when you get a board, you could then, that you don't want it to be blown up, you can grab a Pact Negation with Tolaria West. You could also grab Summoner's Pact. This is like all 3 of these are kind of an Amulet Titan modern deck staples kind of thing, but get Summoner's Pact and get any of your green creatures that I'll go in sooner. But the one I did want to mention right now is if you already used your Pact of Negation, you wanted to protect your board, you get Summoner's Pact, and now I added the Mystic Snake just so you can grab an emergency counter spell if you need it, which is kind of cool. All right, so here's some other land tutors. You got the Expedition map that I already mentioned. You got Crop Rotation, Instant Speed. It's
sweet. You can get your tap down land, you get a chump blocker, get your Valakut, just anything. And same thing, Sullen Scrying, get any land you need. It's great, but this is the best one in the deck. Hour of Promise goes 5 to 7. This was again a modern deck. You can put Field of Dead in another land, and right there you get 2 zombies and start going off. But my favorite thing is to, if you already have a bunch of islands, you can get the a fetch land and Field of Dead. Fetch before you draw your next turn after you played this to get your Mystic Sanctuary, and then get this back on top. Do it all over again. You get Vesuva with the next one, and kind of go off with Hour of Promise. It's kind of sweet. Again, that's a spell kind of synergies with the lands type of stuff, which is kind of nice. And here's the MDFCs, mobile double-face cards. Again, since I went into heavy instant sorceries, I was able to add the visions here and the recovery. This is another Eternal Witness. You guys know it's my favorite card. Get anything back, and Valakut Awakening. Got some cool synergies with this within the creatures. So it's awesome to recur these with Crucible Worlds or Remnant Excavator, which you'll see in a few. And then you can bounce them back with hand. I'll show you with the creatures way to bounce stuff to your hand. So you get Restoration again. This is an insane card in the deck. This is actually almost a win con. You'll see in a few, and then it's nice to have a summon removal with Shatter Skull Summoning. These can be recurred over and over again in this deck. Extra land drops, like a typical ramp deck. You got your Exploration. Druid's Class is a new one I added. If I don't like this, I can take it out later, but it's kind of nice. It's the only thing really to gain life. So it's kind of nice. Sakura Tribal Scout mentioned earlier in the PowerPoint, and Azusa is the best one. Here's some Simic ones that are nice. Zymone is great. It's sweet that you can cascade into this and then start tapping it right away with with Maelstrom Wanderer, put lands in, and then later on you can just start drawing cards. Great. Uro's great, gets extra lands. What this is really, I've played, when you have a Maelstrom Wanderer out and you like draw this, you play it, draw a card, put a land in play, and then you can play it from graveyard, draw a card, put a land in play, and then since you have haste, you attack, draw a card, put a land in play, gain 9 life, draw 3 cards, put 3 lands in play because of the haste. I've done that before. It's pretty awesome. I don't even know this. Asai, extra land drops, draw a card, and Urban Evolution. This is a sorcery that you can recur, draw 3 cards, play an additional land. Nice. And now this one here. This is a Strixhaven card, Jadzi. I don't know how to say its name, but everyone thought, wow, this is insane. You can play instant sorceries, which I do have a lot of instant sorceries, so this front side is quite good. But actually, I think the back half of this is even better. Since I'm bouncing lands and I have ways to like bounce pretty much my whole board of lands, I can play this and put all of them back into play and then discard a card to get it back to my hand and do it all over again if I have ways to bounce it. This card, this back half is actually probably the best part of this card in this deck, so it's kind of nice. All right, then still some more extra land drops. You got Broken Bond. You need some interaction, play an extra land while you do it. This is probably the best extra land drop card in the deck because it's a sorcery. You can return it with Mystic Sanctuary. Get 3 extra lands per turn. Summer Bloom. Journey Discovery, get 2 extra land drops. If you're running low on lands, this is great because it can just get you a couple lands. If you're running low on your island count, get 2 islands so you can get Mystic Sanctuary online. And Far Wanderings is a late game powerhouse. Get your threshold, put 3 bases in with 1 card. I tried to avoid a lot of the typical cultivates and all that Kudamas reaches because I just wanted to add a variety of cool effects that people don't typically see. So Ghostly Flicker, a lot of people don't realize this hits lands too. That's one of my this Ghostly Flicker is one of my favorite blink spells. You can just get 2 landfall triggers with this. You can blink your creatures to save them or get ETBs. It's just very versatile card. And then this is the only landfall card in the deck. Lotus Cobra. You can kind of storm off with this sometimes. It's really good. And last few of the extra land drops. Both these give you 1 extra land drop per turn. Dryad is the one that you could turn on your Valakut. You need Dryad. It's one of the most important creatures in the deck to turn on your Valakut. Super fun when you get that going. And then this Minna and Den Wildborn, play an extra land, but this is also synergized with the return land. You can really just take over the game with this. You can return your control lands, make plants, or start hitting. If you have both these out, you can start you never run out of lands with this deck, because this is one of the first ones that you can return lands with that I've shown you. And then here, Prismatic Omen, same effect as Dryad. I added this because I realized how good Dryad was. I wanted to maximize my ways to find that effect. And you can also get the Dryad with the Summoner's Pact, which is kind of nice. All right, back to bouncing lands. And this is really kind of this card here, Flooded Shoreline. 2 blue, return 2 islands you control to owner's hand, return target creature to its owner's hand. This is the one that really made the bouncing lands deck come to life with me, and I really liked that you can return islands. So that's what was kind of cool. It's more of an island-based ramp deck instead of forest-based ramp deck. And then once they play printed Mystic Sanctuary, this can return your Mystic Sanctuary, so that's a nice overlapping synergy. You can bounce your own creature with this. I bounced my Mystic Snake, I bounced my Eternal Witness, I bounced my Maelstrom Wanderer with this, and then also people get really annoyed if you have a Urza out and this. It doesn't matter, you just play those 2 lands you returned. You'll never run out of lands when you have this. Also, with the Dryad, another thing is when you says return islands, this turns all your lands into islands. And the same thing with Omen. So now you can return any 2 lands that you can then. So maybe return the MDFCs. You can return any of the cool stuff that you saw already with the lands. And on the return island theme, I saw Gush. This is a great card. Return 2 islands, instant speed, draw 2 cards. So it's a free spell. And another free spell, free counter spell, return 3 islands. So again, if you have the Omen or the Dryad out, you can return any of your lands. These are great. I already talked about Wildborn. Living Twister I just added. I took out trade routes just because I can tutor this up with Mystic or with Summoner's Pact, and I also like this. You can deal 2 damage, discard a land to deal 2 damage at any target. It's just a little more versatile compared to the trade routes. But if I don't like it, I could put trade routes back in, or I could take out the Druid class and put trade routes back in. I know this is probably overall better because you can't kill it. Being an enchantment, it's a little harder to deal with, but I kind of like to have this interesting effect of discarding land, deal 2 damage to anything. Kind of nice. And then Cloudsword Curio is probably the best land returner in the deck. A lot of people didn't realize you can return any permanent. When I play this, they're like, oh, you can return your lands with that? And it kind of goes off. You never run out of lands. You could tap a land, play your land drop for the turn, return the tap land that you just tapped for mana, and then play the one that you just return to the hand. And then if you have 5 land drops, will always have every single land drop as long as you have 1 starting in your hand with this out. You can just always maximize your land drops with this. And then if you have Fuel of the Dead, then you can start returning your creatures with land drops. Because you put out a zombie, return your Mystic Snake with the zombie entering. You return your Eternal Witness with the zombie entering. So a lot of synergies with Cloudsword Curio. So recurring the MDFCs. These here, Ramina Excavator and Ancient Green Warden, are the 2 that you can get with the Summoner's Pact. But these are the only in here for MDFCs. I didn't really care about getting my fetch lands back. I really just wanted to, when MDFCs got printed, I wanted to abuse those so much so that they went in this deck, and I really built around MDFCs to play them from my hand, return them, bounce them back to my hand, play them again, and this is a way to do that. Ancient Green Warden is great because you could double up your Valakut triggers. You can double up the Mossport Bridge is a really interesting ruling on that one. You can, when you play Mossport Bridge and you have a great Ancient Green Warden, you'll look at the top 4 twice and put them both underneath, and then for 1 green you can play them both. So Ancient Green Warden and Mossport Bridge is really good synergies as well. All right, so now on to the spells. Let's start with Spellseeker's tutor package that I added. We got 11 different instant sorceries that you can grab with Spellseeker. Some of them I've already mentioned, but we'll just mention them again. But let's start with Brainstorm and Worldly Tutor, because these 2 are put in the deck because they synergize with Maelstrom Wanderer. Brainstorm is probably a staple for Maelstrom Wanderer decks. But since you have a lot of land tutors and a lot of ways to shuffle your deck, it's also just a good card in general in this deck. But yeah, put 2 big things on top that you want to Maelstrom Wanderer hit, bada bing, cascade into both of them. Worldly Tutor is great. I do not include Mystical Tutor, even though it also is probably a staple in Maelstrom Wanderer deck. And I will going to be making a video on tutors, and I will explain why I didn't include Mystical Tutor in that video. But anyways, with Worldly Tutor, I love to put Balefire Dragon on top. And Balefire Dragon is one of the only cards in the deck that doesn't really synergize with any of the deck besides just being a big chunky creature that Maelstrom Wanderer can hit. But this is kind of my board wipe of choice. You can grab this with Worldly Tutor, and then it has haste. So if Maelstrom Wanderer didn't give it haste, this would not probably be in the deck. But it's kind of fun. I love the flavor of this thing. It's like just blowing up all your opponent's creatures. It's so great. But anyways, let's get on to Spellseeker's other tutor targets. Crop Rotation, Sylvan Scrying, Summer Bloom, Broken Bonds, and all of these I've already mentioned besides Cyclone Grift. Cyclone Grift is a staple in blue decks, and I also like that you can grab with Spellseeker. It's one of my board wipes in this deck. So all these I mentioned besides Cyclone Grift. And then Regrowth. Regrowth is another great Eternal Witness effect. And Eternal Witness is my favorite card, so I wanted to include this. You can grab it with Spellseeker, and you could also return it with Mystic Sanctuary. So now your Mystic Sanctuary is Eternal Witness when you get a Regrowth in there. So let's move on to Recursion, since I've been talking about Regrowth. Eternal Witness is going to be in every single one of my green decks. It's my favorite card. I love Tamiyo. It's probably my favorite Planeswalker because it also just returns a card from a graveyard. It's another Eternal Witness effect, and we already talked about this recovery card here is another return, and then we also have the Regrowth. So 4 recursion effects, and then you can recur the recovery with, already I told you about that, and Regrowth you can recur as well with your Mystic Sanctuary. So these are great. Tamiyo also synergizes with Uro. You can +1 and hit an Uro randomly, or fill up the grave with Uro, and then Uro can keep coming back with Tamiyo. It's really great. So here's my interaction. Since we're now onto spells, and we can recur these spells with all the various effects I've already talked about. Another board wipe, Blasphemous Act, and this is a nice one because you can't cascade into it. Sometimes you don't want to cascade into a board wipe with Maelstrom Wanderer, so this is great. Capsize. So I had Oko in this deck, but again, Oko is just a good card. It didn't synergize with anything else, so I took a poll with some of my buddies and said, would you guys rather play against a Capsize or play against Oko? And obviously they said Capsize. So now Capsize has a little bit more synergy because it's instant that I can get back with Mystic Sanctuary. Cryptic Command, you can get the fog kind of loop going with bouncing Sanctuary and pending Sanctuary, getting the Cryptic Command back. So that's great. And it's also a counter spell that I can cascade into and still kind of get value at bounce, draw, or whatever. And then same thing with Mystic Confluence. I can cascade into this and still be a counter spell, but I can draw 3 cards off it or bounce 3 things. So it's kind of another mini board wipe. So those are my interaction cards. And here are the big spells. Treacherous Terrain, Nexus of Fate, and Genesis Ultimatum. All these, you can't cascade into Treacherous Terrain, but Nexus of Fate is in there just because I wanted a big spell. Because as you can see, there's a lot of little spells. I have 11 targets for Spellseeker. I have 6 targets for my Urza, Saga. There's a lot of little teeny things to hit, but I wanted something that I can always have in the deck. Nexus of Fate is that card that I always can kind of have the chance of hitting Nexus of Fate. And then Genesis Ultimatums is great. I know I don't have a lot of permanents besides lands, but drawing 5 cards would just great for 7 mana as well if you don't hit any permanents. But Treacherous Terrain is great, and I'll talk into more about this probably in a few, but I would not have this in the deck if it didn't cycle itself, because I don't want to be stuck with a 8 mana card. And this effect isn't actually that great. 8 mana to deal 8 damage maybe when you are able to cast it right away. But I'll go into how I make this card a little bit better here shortly. Now, is it good? Now, here, I guess I'll go into it right now. 1,000-Year Storm is the way to make Treacherous Terrain good. Like Izzet, I have a lot of things that are like Seagate Restoration. I can recur that over and over again, and that kind of is now a win con with Nev Mizzet. Seagate Restoration is also a win con with my Nexus of Fate, because I can just end up, I'll have games where I end up with like 30, 40 cards in hand, and I can then find my Nexus of Fate easier with maybe a Tameo, or it kind of gets out of hand if it gets to that point. And then also I have Valakut's Awakening with Nev Mizzet. I can then just after I do a big giant Seagate Restoration, play my Valakut's Awakening, and then if I have like a 1,000-Year Storm, I'll Valakut's Awakening like 4 or 5 times and draw 120 cards, but I won't deck myself because they're just cycling themselves. So that's kind of a win con with Nev Mizzet. I have done that a couple times, but it doesn't always come up. But Nev Mizzet is just good on its own. But a lot of instant sorceries just draw power, and it's kind of great. 1,000-Year Storm, I just added, and it's really fun when you get this down and it sticks. I asked my friends, is this too good to play? I didn't want to be a combo player, and they said, nah, it's not too good, because you do have to have a few extra cards in hand when you play, and also they usually get a turn to interact with it before you go off, because maybe if I play it on turn 6. But late game, I might have like 15 mana, play this, and still have enough mana to go off at the same turn. But this kind of turns the deck into really a spell slinging deck. It's kind of insane. I actually have not seen this played in the wild yet, but if you have a spell slinging deck, play that. It's pretty good. Anyways, I have 30 instant sorceries for Nev Mizzet, so yeah, you're gonna trigger that quite a bit. All right, here's my technology. This is a really fun, interesting set of cards that it's really fun when you get this stuff going. So Mythos can copy any permanent. So you can copy your Valakuts, you can copy your Philodez, you can copy all your lands. It doesn't matter. You can copy your 1,000-Year Storm is another one that's great. You get 2 triggers off that. But anyways, the one I want to end up copying is the Mirari's Conjector or the Primal Wellspring. So Primal Wellspring can flip. Like I said, I have 30 instant sorceries, and then I ramp a little bit because they all cost 1 less, and then you flip into a land. Now you can, once you do that, you can have Mythos copying the Primal Wellspring with this Wellspring mana. This is not a legendary land. So now you will get, this will copy that twice, so then I'll have 2 more Primal Wellspring, so 3 total. And then if you have a way to recur this, then it just kind of gets out of hand. All your instant sorceries now just go insane. Mirari's Conjecture can get instant back, but then you get your Mythos back. Mythos then can copy this, and then you'll just keep on going, but you'll end up having a bunch of Mirari's going over and over again. Maybe you're getting a counterspell, or maybe some way to lock down the board, maybe a Cyclonic Rift over and over again. But then this double thing just becomes this doubles all your spells, kind of like a 1,000-Year Storm, and it kind of goes off. So this is my technology. I wouldn't call these like combos. They're just very well synergized if you don't interact with the stuff. But it's kind of fun if you get this to go off. I actually haven't I've test drawn and got this going off, but I haven't played enough games when I've added this to actually get these off. But I have played each one of these by themselves, and they're great on their own. That's what's awesome about this technology, is they're all great on their own, but when they're together, they're crazy. They're crazy good. So that is the deck. It's kind of hard. It was a lot harder to kind of put together to explain compared to my Naya deck. Has very much this synergizes with this, and it's like in your face, like look at the synergies. I wanted to have lands that interact with the spells, and the spells interact with the lands. And there's a bunch of little side things like the Izzet good, the Izzet stuff, or the technology parts. And there's just a lot of little teeny things that I probably didn't even get to mention that you can do while playing this deck. It's a super fun deck. So if you wanted to build it, go ahead and build it. If you have any questions, let me know. I think my next video will be out in a few weeks, and it will be about kind of how I build decks. And then I will be referring to these 2 decks as examples. And maybe if you like my style, you can kind of learn a few things on my next video. Anyways, thank you. Have a good one. Bye.